Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast. It was the late Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau who once compared living next to the United States to sleeping next to an elephant. No matter how even-tempered the elephant is, said Trudeau, Canada is affected by every twitch and grunt. Well, lately, the elephant has been anything but even-tempered.
Why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state.
U.S. President Donald Trump has not reserved his hostility just for Canada. His speech at the United Nations this week was something.
I'm the president of the United States, but I worry about Europe. I love Europe. I love the people of Europe. And I hate to see it being devastated by energy and immigration. It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
This weekend, the hosts of the very popular U.S. political podcast, The Bulwark, have brought their show north of the border for 2 live editions in Toronto, designed, they say, to commiserate with Canadians, but also to talk about how people in both countries can respond effectively to this moment. Tim Miller is the host of The Bulwark Podcast, and he's with me in studio. Good morning.
How's it going? Good morning. I'm the elephant.
Thanks for being here, or adjacent to the elephant. Okay. Why are you here? Why come to Canada?
I've been wanting to come to Canada. Well, I've been here before, but to do these shows since the spring, and it just takes a minute to get it all worked out with all our visa rules and border rules and all of that. But look, we had a huge surge in interest of folks to the podcast, to our YouTube show once Trump started doing all the 51st state nonsense back in the spring, and I remember being kind of moved by watching videos of like people singing the Canadian national anthem and stuff like at that time, right when this was the most hot. Yeah. And I said to my colleagues, I was like, we should do a show in Canada. I said, the folks up there are passionate and I think it would be fun.
What do you make of the fact that there are a lot of people here paying attention to what you're doing? We could talk more broadly about how, whether Americans are paying attention to us, but it is the subject of endless discussion here.
It's interesting. In some ways, it makes me a little sad because like the degree to which we have a total S show down in our country is what is drawing all you guys to pay attention to us. And I also think that like the nature of our politics has become such a reality show. Like there's no reason it should be that interesting to people, not just in Canada, but I mean we have listeners from everywhere, and they are listening in part because of the direct, how our actions are affecting people here, which is real. Like there's direct policy impact, but they also are watching it kind of like how you might watch the Kardashians, or I don't know what the En Vogue reality show is up here, but there is that element to it too, and like that part is pretty depressing. Like that our politics are so crazy and insane that people watch it for like kind of a weird, dark entertainment as well.
How do you think of the way that the Canadian government has handled the attacks from Donald Trump, particularly when it comes to tariffs? I mean, there's tariffs on there's new ones now on kitchen cabinets, furniture, trucks, pharmaceuticals. He said this is all under the issue of national security. The Canadian government dropped most of its counter tariffs in trying to figure out how to get to a deal with the United States, it seems like. What do you make of that?
It's hard for me to know exactly what's happening behind the scenes with Carney. I was more kind of emotionally attached to the elbows up Carney of the campaign than the actual policies of starting to limit, the reciprocity, if you will. I mean, it's hard for me as an American, like living in Louisiana, to say you Canadians should give them the double middle finger and go go whole hog on this fight because there'll be real suffering in Canada. There'll be real economic hardship. I do think strategically that's probably right. And I look at Vietnam as an example. Vietnam has done everything to sidle up to Trump. Trump has a $1.5 billion golf course that he's building in Vietnam.
And they got nothing.
His family. And they got nothing. Yeah. They got literally nothing. And so, if you take that example, it's kind of like, well, I mean, what is not doing the digital tax, going to do for Canada?
What about not traveling to the States? I mean, I love Louisiana, love California, Arizona. A lot of people are not heading down to...
Everyone should only come to New Orleans. We welcome you with open arms, and it's important for our local restaurateurs.
Do you think that has any impact?
It's having a real impact. Yeah. It is absolutely having an impact. It's having an impact particularly obviously in the Northeast, Maine, like that part of the country. It's having impact on the West Coast, California, like Palm Springs. I have friends that are that I hear from in Palm Springs who talk about how there's loss of business.
They put up little signs on the streets of Palm Springs saying,
come.
"We love Canada."
Yeah, please come. Vegas. There's been a big story about how Vegas is down. So I do think the lack of travel is impacting us, and I get it. Honestly, there's a lot of great places in the world to go. You could just fly right over us and go to Cancun, but do stop in New Orleans.
We spend a lot of time thinking about our relationship with the United States. Yeah. How much time do you think Americans spend thinking about that relationship?
Basically none. I mean, right? Like, this is why it's noteworthy. I just mean, even myself, I could think about I go years without thinking about the Canadian relationship. But I did feel in some ways that you all were on the front lines of this battle against Trump, and I feel like we've been forged a little bit to care about this. So I think that the pro-democracy side, the anti-Trumpers, were thinking about you down there. But look, even Trump, right? And he has the attention span of a gnat. But like, there's a period of time where he's popping off about Canada every week, right? 50, you guys are looking good up there, 51st state.
Why is he doing that?
But he stops, like, talking about it for a while.
It's not just the 51st state. It's also just, to a lot of people, torching what has been a very good trade relationship.
Yeah, he doesn't care about that because Donald Trump doesn't think about the national interest as anything separate from his personal interest. And his personal interest is to be flattered, to be sucked up to be treated well. And he didn't feel like that was happening under Trudeau. Obviously, that wasn't happening with Carney during the campaign. And it's as simple as that. He's not like that complicated of a guy to analyze. And so that's why he's doing it. And I think that at the moment, there have been other issues and things that have distracted him. He's building a new ballroom, et cetera. So like the Canadian, he hasn't talked about Greenland in a while either. Yeah. But in a weird way, the ballroom and the Canada 51st thing are related, right? Like what Trump cares about is his own ego, his own he wants to put a stamp on this whole thing. When he leaves, he wants to have the Trump ballroom at the White House, and he wants, I do think he is interested in could America acquire another country or territory so that people could say that Donald Trump did that, if he ever dies. So I think that is basically all there is to it.
How worried should we be in this country about what people see as the disintegration of democracy in the United States? You have James Comey, the former director of the FBI, now indicted yesterday. People worry openly about growing authoritarianism within that administration and the things that, not just Comey and Jimmy Kimmel, but more than that. How worried should people in this country be about that?
Probably less worried than I should be on this one. Look, I think that there's a lot to be worried about. And Trump has accelerated his efforts to, my colleague Bill Kristol wrote this week, he's like, there's a Watergate a week. Mm-hmm. And the Comey thing, would have been an entire all-encompassing scandal of any other administration. And Trump is doing 3 or 4 of those every week. With Canada, look, I don't expect, sometimes I do hear from my new friends on the left, some catastrophizing about how quickly we're on the path to, I don't think this is the 1930s in Europe right now. I don't think that, Donald Trump's going to gain power and then start actually looking to put troops on the ground of Canada. He's kind of a wimp, actually, when push comes to shove on all this stuff.
So you don't buy the authoritarian piece?
No, I do buy the authoritarian. I just mean in Canada, I don't buy the Nazi, like this is going to be Europe.
Marching across the border.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. I think that Canada, obviously, in some ways, this has probably strengthened your relationship with Europe. There are other ways for, Canada to think about, and I think maybe even potentially strengthened the talent, people that want to come to Canada. And I think that there's potential opportunities here. Obviously, economically, it's a problem. And obviously, to your elephant analogy at the beginning, it's not great for your southern neighbor to be in total chaos, and we are.
You said your new friends on the left. You left the Republican Party in part because of Trump's nomination.
Yeah, almost entirely because of it, yeah.
How surprised are you that the party has just fallen right in line behind him? Is this just about raw power? Is that all it is?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot about raw power, and it also is about Donald Trump tapped into something. And I think you see this a little bit. This is something I would be concerned about up here on the right, is that there's a culturally conservative vein that is happening throughout the world, not just in America. It's just most acute in America. It's particularly happening in rural communities, but also among kind of younger men everywhere. Mm-hmm. And they are motivated by immigration concerns. They're motivated by cultural grievance. They're motivated by, racial concerns. Trump tapped into that in a way that Republicans I liked didn't, right? Like Mitt Romney and John McCain weren't perfect, right? But they didn't give that part of the electorate, kind of the emotional succor that they wanted, right? Trump did. And so in that way, I'm like not surprised, right, that folks rallied behind him. And in that way, that wasn't about power even per se. That was about an ideological desire for a more nationalist, culture warring kind of right party. There are those in India and Brazil and Hungary, all over the world, there are parties like that. So that is part of it. Just because he's so clownish and ridiculous, I was surprised by how much everybody folded to him. Like that to me was the biggest disappointment, right? Like I always kind of worried that that a populist like Palin, you saw it with Palin in 2008. I was worried that a populist right candidate would take over the Republican Party for as long as I was a Republican. But Trump was just such a ridiculous version of it that I thought, not this guy, no way.
Where's the line then, do you think, for people in the party? What would be their line in the sand or whatever the ground is that you're standing on?
There's no line.
There's no line.
What would the line? I mean, there might be a line where it's too late.
Is the line when his popularity starts to erode, when it turns out that he's not saving the economy? And
maybe, yeah. Look, it could be a line if you try. It would be an interesting test to see what the line would be if he tried to run again in 2028 against the plain text of the Constitution. I suspect more Republicans than you expect would go along with that. I do think you're right. Like, if he lost popularity among his own base, that might change things because that would change the incentive structure. But how would that happen? I mean, when the economy crashed in 2020 with COVID, he didn't lose any altitude with his own base. And if there was a major economic recession, potentially, he would lose enough political power to be able to run roughshod over these guys. But I wouldn't say I'm 100% sure that's the case. We
talked to Chris Hayes yesterday from MSNBC, and he talked about how he's not a doomer, that he's clear-eyed about what's going on, but he does not think that this is set in stone. You talked about catastrophizing. Are you somebody who isn't optimistic is the wrong word, but are you able to put cynicism aside?
No. I'm more of a doomer than Chris.
You are.
I am. I mean, again, sometimes you have to put specifics on these definitions. Sometimes I hear people who are doomers who are like, the American experiment is over. We're not going to have elections in 2026, and we're becoming Russia. I'm not that kind of doomer. I just mean that I don't think the trajectory is good about our politics. I think all the incentives are driving towards more rancor, more populist division, more internal strife. If you look at the AI, I see in my life people already have trouble figuring out what is real and what's fake. And the media environment in our country is just so crazy as far as people being in their own silos. And I just think that Donald Trump is not going to be followed by some return to normalcy. Like Donald Trump has unleashed something in the country. People on the right, in particular, want his style of politics, and I think the people on the left are becoming, for good reason, aggrieved and retreating into their own silos, where you kind of get this endless escalation. And I just think that's kind of the trajectory on. I don't see like a return to normalcy, really. That doesn't mean, again, it's a doomer about the end of America. We might muddle through all that, but I think that there are dark clouds on the horizon.
What's your role in trying – you've talked on the podcast about trying to create some sort of common ground or understanding and actually get people to kind of look at each other across the eye and see some sort of degree of humanity.
Yeah.
What is your role in that?
My role is to tell the truth as I see it to people. That is number one, to educate people about what's happening and be honest about my feelings, not do fake outrage about the other side. My role, I think, just because the nature of being a white guy, used to be a Republican, is to try to engage with people on the MAGA right and not really even on the MAGA right, in the center and the center right, people that voted for Trump but are not fully on board with his authoritarian program, and to talk to them and debate with them and commune with them and hopefully like try to create a space where we can have conversations about all this stuff.
Can you do that in this era? Can you do it when you mentioned the algorithm? I mean, it creates the worst behavior in people. It pushes people out to the sides,
pushes people out to the edges. I think so. I don't know. I think that there's an interest of it. Look, I'm clear. I'm not talking about mushy centrism where it's like, oh, no labels, we can all hold hands. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about honest debate. There's certain people I don't have on the podcast if you're going to BS me, right? But if you want to have honest debate you're from the MAGA side, or you were maybe you got sucked into it and you were upset about woke, or you were upset about the economy or whatever. Yeah, like we can engage and we can debate and we can be clear-eyed, and I might pick on you a little bit, but like that is a healthy dialogue. And if we can't have that, if everyone is just retreating to their corners and believing that everyone on the other side is evil and irredeemable, well, then we're screwed. What's the point of all this? I might as well just quit. So I'm going to try at least.
Don't quit. I'm a huge fan of what you do.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I love being here. I'm so excited for the show set. I'm going to sing the national anthem. I'm very excited.
Wow.
It's my big tease.
That is going to be a trip.
All right.
I didn't mean to call you an elephant at the beginning as well.
Okay.
Tim Miller is the host of the Bulwark Podcast. You've been listening to the Current Podcast. My name is Matt Galloway. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.